This
Welcome
isn't about the
to the debate.
technology itself.
Today
it's
we're
about a misunderstanding of
unraveling
how
a
it
truly
works.
head-spinning
Objection.
case.
The witness is
Alberto Daniel
speculating.
Hill.
But my client lost
He's a
everything.
prominent cybersecurity expert from Uruguay who, well, found himself accused of extortion involving cryptocurrencies. This isn't just a legal battle, though. It's a saga that really exposes the growing pains our justice systems face grappling with a rapidly evolving digital world. It highlights critical challenges, the kind legal systems worldwide face when prosecuting cybercrimes, especially with new tech involved. And it raises profound questions about forensics practices, technical competence, and frankly, due process itself.
The core question we're tackling today, I think, is this. Did the judicial and police actors in the Alberto Daniel Hill case really get a handle on the complexities of digital evidence and uphold legal protocols? Or were their actions, perhaps understandably, hampered by a real lack of technical know-how and, well, some serious procedural missteps?
Right, and I'll be arguing that despite the novel challenges, and they were novel, authorities acted on the available information. They operated within their existing legal framework to investigate what was on its face a serious accusation.
And I'll be contending that the investigation was fundamentally flawed, that it demonstrated, frankly, systemic incompetence and a stark disregard for established legal and forensic standards.
Okay, so from my perspective, we really need to consider the context here. The medical provider's report, it was about an extortion attempt involving sensitive patient data and a demand for Bitcoin. That's a serious allegation. This compelled both the police, specifically Interpol, and the judiciary to act swiftly. And let's not forget, back in 2017, the whole concept of cyber extortion involving cryptocurrencies was still relatively nascent for law enforcement globally. They were, in many ways, navigating uncharted waters. So the police initiated their investigation based on what appeared to be credible leads. This included tracing an IP address to Hill's known location and his reported connection to the medical provider's website. Then, upon searching Hill's home, they discovered a significant cache of electronic devices. We're talking multiple computers, blank magnetic cards, card-reading equipment. Now, in the context of an alleged cybercrime, these items could reasonably be interpreted as instruments for illicit activities, like maybe carding, the fraudulent use of stolen credit card information, or other cybercrimes. It justified a certain level of suspicion and intervention. Furthermore, during the initial interrogations, Alberto Daniel Hill actually confessed. He admitted sending that extortion email. Now, this confession, it's a powerful piece of evidence, right? It was presented to the judge, who then ordered preventive detention. The reasoning cited concerns about Hill's potential flight risk and also that his advanced technical knowledge might allow him to interfere with the ongoing investigation. Ultimately, the state has a responsibility, a duty, to protect its citizens from cyber threats, especially when you consider Uruguay's vulnerability. Millions of cyber attack attempts annually.
I'm sorry, I don't quite buy that it was merely uncharted waters. What we saw, I believe, was a profound and systemic lack of technical competence on the part of the judicial and police actors, and it fundamentally undermined the entire investigation and prosecution of Alberto Daniel Hill. This deficit, it led to just gross misinterpretations of Hill's professional tools and even his activities. For instance, investigators confused the seed phrase, which, as you know, is a master key, typically 12 or 24 words, essential for recovering a cryptocurrency wallet. They confused that with what they bafflingly called a security card that had only one keyword. They also failed to grasp that self-custody wallets, unlike, say, traditional bank accounts, simply cannot be locked after incorrect password attempts. These aren't obscure details, they're basic concepts central to handling crypto assets correctly. But it gets worse. The chain of custody for the digital evidence, it was catastrophically mishandled. Hill's Ledger Nano S hardware wallet, it contained 27 Bitcoins and other cryptocurrencies. It was seized, okay? But it was later returned empty. This wasn't some mystery. It was almost certainly because the police attempted incorrect pins repeatedly, which triggers the device's auto-erase feature. It permanently destroys access to the funds. And his phone, which was absolutely critical for two-factor authentication to his online exchange accounts, was kept on and accessed without documentation. This directly led to an irretrievable loss of over $100,000 when the exchange, WexNZ, which was a significant, albeit controversial, crypto trading platform back then, collapsed. Then, crucial evidence like the alleged extortion email itself and firewall logs, they were presented as mere paper printouts. This directly violates Uruguay's Ley 18,600, which is the country's key law for ensuring the authenticity and integrity of digital documents through electronic signatures. It basically renders them legally inadmissible by established standards.
Okay, but inadmissible or just not best practice at the time?
Inadmissible by the law cited. Beyond these technical failings, Hill's fundamental due process rights were frankly egregiously violated. He was interrogated without a lawyer present, subjected to intense psychological pressure, and explicit threats against his family were used to elicit what he maintains was a false confession. He was denied vital anxiety and ADHD medication for 48 hours, severely impairing his ability to think clearly and defend himself. And the police compounded these issues by leaking false information to the media, creating a juicio mediático, a trial by media that absolutely destroyed his reputation long before any conviction. So, when we talk about technical competence, the argument that authorities faced novel challenges, to me, it's simply insufficient. It doesn't excuse such a complete lack of understanding of the very subject matter they were investigating. Hill, he's a recognized cybersecurity expert. He engaged in responsible disclosure, which is a common industry practice, reporting vulnerabilities privately first. He did this to Uruguay CERT, their computer emergency response team, in both 2014 and 2015, regarding the very medical provider whose vulnerabilities are central to this case. Yet the CERT director later testified to the judge that he had no recollection of these reports, effectively erasing Hill's legitimate intent and expertise from the judicial record. Instead, his professional tools, things like port scanners, card readers used for legitimate research, multiple computers, which are, standard kit for any serious cybersecurity professional, they were wrongly labeled as instruments of crime. And let's not overlook a glaring technical detail. The alleged extortion email itself, it was missing a crucial Bitcoin wallet address. This rendered the extortion technically impossible to complete. How could prosecutors overlook such a fundamental omission while asking completely irrelevant questions about a USB killer, a device designed to physically fry hardware? It demonstrates, I think, a profound inability to distinguish between legitimate cybersecurity work and actual criminal intent. That's a major red flag for me.
Okay, I see why you emphasize those specific technical points. And yes, it's true that hindsight always offers perfect clarity. But try to put yourself in the shoes of law enforcement back in 2017. They were confronted with a serious allegation, they had an IP trace, and they found this cache of digital devices. Now, while the absence of a direct Bitcoin wallet address in the email might seem to weaken the extortion claim technically, does it necessarily negate the intent to extort? Law enforcement had an explicit report of an extortion attempt, plus other circumstantial evidence, like that IP trace. Sometimes, even an imperfectly executed attempt at a crime still constitutes a crime in progress, or at least an attempted one. Their focus was likely on the broader perceived threat, not just the technical completeness of the demand itself. And regarding the tools, yes, professional cybersecurity experts use these devices legitimately, but the presence of numerous items that could be interpreted as hacking tools, especially when combined with an active extortion accusation, well, it painted a picture that necessitated intervention. It's a common challenge for law enforcement globally, interpreting rapidly evolving digital tools. They often have to act decisively based on the best available information at that moment, particularly when dealing with the pressure of what looks like criminal activity. Hill's own confession, too, even though it was later contested, was a direct admission that authorities had to consider as part of their initial assessment. And the sheer volume of reported cyber attack attempts in Uruguay, millions annually, it just underscores the immense pressure on authorities to be vigilant, to act decisively on what appears to be criminal activity, even if their understanding of the underlying tech is still developing. Their primary role, after all, is public safety.
That's a compelling point about the pressures. Yes. But I feel you're sidestepping the fundamental issue here, advocate. The integrity of this entire case rests on evidence that was, by all accounts, systematically compromised. not merely imperfectly handled. The police actively destroyed digital assets when they improperly tried to access Hill's Ledger Nano S. That led to the irreversible loss of 27 bitcoins and other crypto. This isn't just a minor error. It's a fundamental breach of forensic protocol. It's like smashing physical evidence. In the digital world, an improperly handled device isn't just corrupted, it's often destroyed. The data is gone forever. This demands a different approach, a paradigm shift from just collect and analyze to secure and preserve with expert precision for digital evidence. Furthermore, his phone, a crucial two-factor authentication device, kept powered on, connected to Google for days after seizure. His WhatsApp and Telegram accounts were accessed, all without proper documentation or adherence to standard forensic protocols, like immediate shutdown or, at the very least, bit-by-bit cloning, making an exact forensically sound copy. This directly facilitated the loss of over $100,000 in cryptocurrency from his wex.nz account when that platform collapsed. That's not just mishandling, that's gross negligence. It resulted in significant financial damage and the loss of potentially critical evidence. And presenting crucial digital evidence, firewall logs, the email as mere paper printouts without the required electronic signatures or verification under Uruguay's Ley 18600, it makes it legally inadmissible and fundamentally unreliable. Plus, the fact that the police apparently left behind dozens of hard drives and other potential evidence at his home, it just further illustrates for me gross incompetence in evidence handling, indicating a complete disregard for proper procedures, not just minor oversight.
I do understand the gravity of lost digital assets, and certainly ideal forensic practices are always the goal. But you're characterizing these actions as active destruction and gross negligence, dissenter, when it seems more plausible they were the result of operating under significant constraints in a rapidly evolving threat landscape. The challenges of securing digital evidence, especially in a fast-moving investigation, from a suspect's home filled with complex, numerous devices, they are considerable. Now, while adherence to every ideal forensic protocol might not have been perfect, the clear intention was surely to secure material relevant to the case. The seizure of the Ledger Nano S, even if its digital contents became inaccessible later, was an attempt to secure an item clearly linked to cryptocurrencies, a relatively new form of asset for law enforcement to manage back then. The argument about the phone's mishandling has to be balanced against the immediate need, potentially, to investigate its contents for ongoing criminal activity or perhaps communication with accomplices. Shutting it down immediately might have meant losing volatile data or access to encrypted communications, potentially essential for the investigation. And yes, while paper printouts might not meet today's highest standards, at the time, and within the context of an emerging field like digital forensics in Uruguay, these served as a representation of digital records, which, for the legal proceedings then, were deemed sufficient. It's plausible that specific high-level standards like bit-by-bit cloning and electronic signatures, while definitely desirable, were not yet universally or rigorously applied by all agencies, or perhaps were seen as secondary to the immediate collection of what they perceived as evidence related to an alleged crime. We can't immediately equate these practical difficulties with deliberate destruction or disregard. It's more like a spectrum of technical readiness, perhaps.
That argument of practical difficulties, though, it just doesn't hold up when we examine the violations of Hill's due process. These were not minor oversights. They feel like calculated actions aimed at securing a conviction. His initial interrogation without a lawyer, immediately followed by intense psychological pressure and explicit threats against his family, that's a coercive tactic. It rendered his confession involuntary and, by any reasonable legal standard, unreliable. It's a fundamental breach of legal safeguards. Then the denial of his essential anxiety and ADHD medication for 48 hours. That further compromised his mental state and severely impaired his ability to articulate an effective defense. I mean, how can you expect someone to adequately defend themselves under those conditions?
Beyond the interrogation room, the police deliberately engaged in a juicio mediático.
They released false information and photos to the press, including his identity, implying other crimes like carding that were never actually proven. This public vilification, happening before any conviction, severely violated his presumption of innocence. It mirrors the kind of unjust persecutions we've seen in other high-profile tech cases, like Aaron Swartz or Julian Assange. This wasn't just reputational damage. It showcased how public opinion, fueled by potentially misinformed leaks, can create a preemptive guilty verdict, undermining the very foundation of innocent until proven otherwise. And the judge's justifications for preventative detention, citing a risk of escape that was later contradicted by granting Hill extensive prison furlough, it highlights a profound disconnect from reality, maybe even an arbitrary exercise of power. It demonstrates a systemic disregard for basic rights, in my view.
But while I certainly acknowledge the serious concerns raised about due process, I think it's important to frame these actions within the difficult job law enforcement faces. Securing a confession, when permissible by law, is a common investigative technique. It's used to ascertain the truth, provided it doesn't cross clear legal lines into outright torture or blatant coercion. While certain tactics might involve psychological pressure, these are often understood, rightly or wrongly, as part of the investigative process. It's undoubtedly a tough balance for investigators trying to get to the bottom of a serious accusation. And regarding the media's role in reporting on arrests is fundamentally independent of law enforcement. While police may issue press releases, the subsequent media narrative and the resulting public perception aren't entirely within their control.
To suggest it was a calculated media trial might be overstating the police's direct influence on how the story unfolds once it's out there in the public domain. The judge's decision for preventative detention, remember, was based on the information and legal arguments presented at that time. It reflected a precautionary measure. That it was later adapted with the granting of furlough as the case progressed actually demonstrates flexibility within the judicial system, adapting as more information perhaps became available, rather than indicating an arbitrary exercise of power. It's just crucial to acknowledge the immense pressure on police and prosecutors. They need to solve complex cybercrimes and ensure public safety, and this sometimes necessitates firm action within the bounds they perceive to be legal and necessary to protect the public. They are operating in a highly sensitive and scrutinized environment, after all.
So, in conclusion, the judicial and police actors in the Alberto Daniel Hill case, they operated under significant pressure. They were responding to a reported cybercrime involving emerging technologies. Now, while in retrospect, yes, we can point to challenges in technical understanding and maybe a departure from ideal forensic protocols, authorities acted on a serious accusation using the tools and processes available to them at the time. Their focus on the reported threat, the items seized, and that initial confession, it allowed the legal system to pursue what they believed was a just course of action. It really underscores the immense complexities of enforcing law in this rapidly evolving digital age. This situation ultimately, it highlights the incredible strain placed on institutions that are struggling to adapt to a world changing faster than legislation or training can often keep up.
This case, however, represents far more than just challenges or strains. For me, it's a profound and systemic failure. It highlights the critical, urgent need for judicial and police systems to rapidly evolve their technical understanding and to strictly adhere to established legal and forensic protocols. The repeated instances of technical misunderstanding, the egregious breaches in the chain of custody for digital evidence, and the flagrant violations of fundamental human rights inflicted upon Alberto Daniel Hill, they reveal a process that wasn't merely imperfect, but fundamentally unjust. His story serves as a stark warning, I think, of the devastating human cost when the justice system fails to adapt to the complexities of the digital era, and it forces us to confront the reality that an outdated legal framework can absolutely devastate individual lives.
The case of Alberto Daniel ultimately leaves us pondering a crucial, delicate balance: the imperative of effective crime fighting versus the unyielding commitment to upholding fundamental rights and rigorous legal standards. This is especially true when law enforcement grapples with complex and rapidly advancing technologies. The debate about how to ensure justice in the digital era certainly continues, and Hill's experience offers a crucial, if sobering, point of reflection for every legal system worldwide.